I 35F recently achieved a significant life milestone, purchasing my first house. Years of careful financial planning and dedication finally paid off when I secured a comfortable space of my own. While it's not a mansion, it's perfect for me, a peaceful haven in a good neighborhood. Having a place that truly belongs to me felt amazing, a testament to all my hard work and preparation. When I told them, my parents, bless their hearts, were overjoyed. I thought it was genuinely wonderful when they volunteered to help with some minor renovations right away. They insisted it was their way of showing support and celebrating this new chapter in my life. I agreed, imagining maybe some fresh paint here, some landscaping there, nothing major. But my parents, well, they got very carried away. Their helpful visits quickly became a daily occurrence. Every time they showed up, they brought a new guest, a friend, a distant relative, even the elderly lady from down their street. It was as if my house had become the neighborhood tourist attraction. While I brushed it off, I found it a bit excessive. They loved showcasing family achievements, and they were proud of me, particularly since Michael, my younger brother, 32M, was always the golden child. Michael has always commanded the most attention, even though he's 3 years younger. Growing up, he got everything he wanted. If Michael wanted a new gaming console, they'd get him the deluxe edition. He maxed out their credit cards for designer clothes. While I love my brother, it was no secret he was always favored. Recently, Michael got engaged to his fiancée with similarly expensive tastes, though lacking the royal budget. My parents were discussing how quickly the wedding expenses were spiraling out of control, though I hardly paid attention. Their determination to make his day unforgettable made sense. Then odd things started happening. Suddenly, my parents began inquiring about my house's value, outstanding mortgage, and whether I'd ever considered refinancing. While strange, I didn't think much of it since they'd never shown interest in my finances before. I figured they were just curious. A week later, they asked me to come over for dinner, specifically requesting I bring my mortgage and property documents. While it seemed entirely pointless, presumably about security concerns, I agreed, wanting to avoid stirring up any issues. In hindsight, I should have been more suspicious. Around this time, I started hearing peculiar comments from my neighbors. They'd casually mention seeing a house exactly like mine posted online. While puzzled, I dismissed it as coincidence. Then one acquaintance emailed me a link to a real estate listing. It was my house, complete with interior photos. The images were from the renovations my parents had been helping with. I had no idea why or how my house was for sale. My blood ran cold. Armed with undeniable evidence, the real estate listing with photos shot inside my house, I confronted my parents. They could no longer play dumb. They first tried to downplay it, claiming they were merely exploring options in case I ever decided to sell. I wasn't buying it. I demanded a straight answer. Why would they list my residence without even asking me? Finally, the truth came to light. They came clean about listing the house to help finance Michael's dream wedding. They said it was all for the good of family happiness, and since I had achieved my dream of owning a house, it was only fair to help Michael achieve his. They went on endlessly about how he deserved the wedding of his dreams and how the equity in my house could make it possible. Just because they had helped with some renovations, my parents actually felt they had a say in how my house might be used. The sense of entitlement was staggering. I made it crystal clear that my house was not for sale and that it was most definitely not a bank funding Michael's lavish wedding. Still, they wouldn't let it go. They tried every strategy in the book: guilt trips, emotional blackmail, even bringing up things they did for me years ago. They reminded me of how much they had given me growing up and said I was putting money above family. To them, my refusal to sell the house was a rejection of the family itself as much as Michael's happiness. I stood firm. I reiterated that they had crossed a major line and that the house was not for sale. Then came the call from Michael himself. He was crying, furious and hurt, accusing me of ruining his wedding and charging me with selfish behavior. He said I had no right to deny him this one thing after all the family had done for me over the years. It stung, but I held fast. I explained that I had no obligation to sell my house to pay for his fantasy wedding. I then shared the whole incident with a couple of close friends. As shocked as I was, they immediately supported me, assuring me I had every right to protect my house. They reminded me that my family's actions were completely out of line and urged me to stand my ground. Word quickly spread through the family, and reactions were divided. Some relatives understood me and said it was absurd for my parents to list my house without my permission. Others, however, backed my parents and argued I should compromise for family harmony. Not sacrificing my house for a wedding somehow made me feel like I'd suddenly become the villain in this twisted narrative. A few days later, my parents delivered an ultimatum: either I sold the house voluntarily, or I would have to deal with the family's collective disapproval. They made it abundantly clear that I would essentially be disowned if I didn't comply. Hearing my own parents outline such a difficult choice over a wedding that, in truth, had nothing to do with me was surreal. Through all of this, my fiancé Thomas, 37M, has been my rock. We've been together for several years, and he's always understood me in a way my family never has. When I told him about everything that was happening, he was furious on my behalf but also helped me think clearly about my next steps. We'd been planning to get married ourselves, though we wanted something small and intimate, quite the opposite of Michael's extravaganza. One person who stood by me through all of this is my grandfather William, 77M. He's never particularly liked Michael, called my parents out constantly on their favoritism. We have a special relationship. He says I remind him of my grandmother, his wife, who passed away years ago. Michael, of course, tries to throw it in my face that Mom loves him more, but he lives across the country and I rarely see him. He's truly a spoiled brat. Years ago, when Michael got his football scholarship, I discovered that my parents had actually given him the money to buy a house and car. They never paid a penny for my education. When I confronted them about my college fund, they claimed it had gone to post-fire bills at Michael's university. I had to take out student loans and work through college while Michael lived in luxury. I realized at that point that I needed legal guidance. I contacted a lawyer, explaining the whole situation. The attorney advised taking some precautions. Even though my family couldn't legally sell my house without my permission, I should ensure none of the locks would allow anyone access to the property without my authorization. They also suggested securing any valuables and sensitive documents in case my parents tried further intervention. I immediately followed their advice, changing the locks and securing my paperwork. But my folks didn't stop there. Not long after our confrontation, they started airing their grievances on social media. They made long, dramatic posts about how I had turned my back on the family and was selfishly clinging to money that would fulfill dreams for my brother. They portrayed me as some heartless villain, which resulted in an onslaught of comments from family friends and distant relatives, most of whom knew nothing about the whole truth. The most unexpected support came from Thomas. Despite the chaos, we've been secretly planning our own wedding. We want something small and meaningful, surrounded by people who truly care about us. Thomas suggested we might not want to tell my family until after everything is arranged. Given their track record, they might try to sabotage it or turn it into another drama about Michael. As I write this, I'm torn between my love for my family and my need to protect myself and my future. The house represents everything I've worked for, and I refuse to let it be taken away for someone else's extravagant desires. But the constant pressure and emotional manipulation are taking their toll. I know I'm right, but sometimes standing up for yourself against family feels like the hardest thing in the world. Tomorrow, Thomas and I are meeting with my grandfather to discuss our wedding plans. He's the only family member I trust completely, and his support means the world to me. I just hope I can find the strength to keep standing my ground, no matter what my parents throw at me next. Update 1: It's been 3 weeks since my last post, and I need to update you on what's been happening. The situation with my family has escalated in ways I never expected. After sending the cease and desist letter through my lawyer, my parents finally removed the real estate listing of my house. However, their reaction was far from apologetic. Instead of backing down, they labeled the letter a betrayal and accused me of legal harassment. They claimed my selfish refusal to help with Michael's wedding was causing unnecessary family strife. That letter became the tipping point, driving us further apart. Rather than taking responsibility, they intensified their social media campaign, writing dramatic updates portraying me as the villain tearing the family apart over just money. My mother would lament about how I had turned against them, heartbroken that I would put money before love. The posts were vague enough to fool anyone who didn't know the real situation, and soon distant relatives and family friends were leaving supportive comments in their favor. Some even messaged me personally, loaded with criticism and condemnation. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Michael decided to personally confront me. He showed up at my house unannounced, enraged. He argued that my house had always been family property and accused me of being jealous of his happiness, saying I had no right to keep it all to myself when the family needed it for something as important as his wedding. I stayed below the bait, calmly reiterating that I had no intention of selling the house. It was legally mine, purchased with my own hard-earned money. That only seemed to infuriate him more. As he stormed off, my parents called the next day with fresh demands. Since I wasn't willing to sell the house, they urged me to give them a substantial loan instead. Given the once-in-a-lifetime nature of Michael's wedding, they argued that as family, I owed it to them in whatever capacity I could. I refused, remaining cool. I owed nothing, and their requests seemed completely out of line. Their response was to completely cut off contact with me. They stopped inviting me to family gatherings, and soon I began hearing from other relatives claiming I had pushed everyone away. My parents were clearly trying to isolate me, expecting the silent treatment would make me cave. The hurt is profound, but my close friends have stood by me. They keep reminding me that I'm doing the right thing, and without their support, I'm not sure how I would have maintained my resolve. A few days ago, I received a call from the real estate agent who had visited my place before. While they confirmed my parents had finally deleted the listing following the cease and desist letter, I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. My suspicions were validated when I noticed my locks appeared different one evening at home. Though subtle, I could tell they had been tampered with. Initially, I assumed someone had tried to break in, possibly in retaliation to the legal letter. I immediately called a locksmith to change every lock again. After everything that's happened, I couldn't take any chances. Even though I didn't want to believe my own family could stoop to this level, I'm starting to pay attention to every detail. To sort through the emotional mess this family betrayal has left behind, I've started therapy. Each session helps me unpack layers of guilt and manipulation I hadn't even realized were affecting me. The therapist is helping me see how deeply ingrained these family dynamics are and how important it is to establish boundaries, even within family. Thomas and I have secretly moved forward with our wedding plans. My grandfather William is helping us arrange everything, and it feels wonderful to have at least one family member who truly supports us. We're planning something small and meaningful, exactly what we both want. The contrast between our approach and Michael's extravaganza couldn't be more stark. The hardest part in all of this has been watching my parents continue their smear campaign within the extended family, building a narrative where I'm the selfish daughter more concerned with her money than maintaining family unity. The story spread quickly, and before long, I was receiving letters from relatives I hadn't seen in years, all expressing disappointment and accusing me of destroying family togetherness. I've started documenting every interaction I have with my parents, Michael, and any relative who reaches out, in case things heat up again. I want a clear record of everything that's been said and done. Keeping a record also helps me feel more in control of the situation, as though I'm finally taking active steps to properly defend myself. Despite the chaos, I'm finding my resolve strengthening. Every attempt to guilt-trip me, every rumor they spread, only serves to confirm that I made the right decision. I'm not going to let anyone, not even my family, destroy the life I've carefully built for myself. Thomas and I are moving forward with our plans, and I'll update again once there's more to share. Thank you all for your support, it means more than you know. Update 2, it's been 2 months since my last update, and everything has changed. Thomas and I got married last weekend, yes, without my parents or Michael knowing. I need to share what happened. We held a beautiful, intimate ceremony with just our closest friends, Thomas's family, and my grandfather William, who proudly walked me down the aisle. He was absolutely beaming with joy for us. Since several people asked where my parents were, I simply answered they had to attend Michael's game. Grandfather was initially hesitant about our secrecy, but that was it. When we returned from our brief honeymoon, completely unplugged, let's just say a storm was brewing. Turning on my phone, I was flooded with notifications before I could even unlock it, mostly from my mom and Michael. Michael was hurling obscenities and calling me names. Apparently, my aunt had posted wedding pictures on Facebook with a not-so-subtle dig at my parents for not being there. The post went viral in their small town, and suddenly everyone was criticizing how they had treated me. It turns out my grandfather had even paid them a visit and given them a piece of his mind. For my dad, this seems to have been the final straw. He was so upset about missing my wedding and his own father's criticism that he finally stood up to my mother and threatened divorce if she didn't make things right. It started with all angry messages and then shifted to becoming pleading and begging. My mom's sisters and friends are giving me grief for not explicitly stating it was my wedding. Many of my relatives, including those I hadn't invited, have apologized, saying they had no idea how bad things were at home. But honestly, I don't buy it. I did tell my parents I was getting married like everyone else. I sent them a paper invitation. My parents, Michael, some distant relatives, and a few people on Thomas's side didn't RSVP. Everyone else responded. When I followed up, those who didn't claimed they couldn't make it. I texted my mother and brother, but they ignored me. Knowing about Michael's game, I purposely omitted mentioning the exact date. Every time I tried to discuss the wedding, they would tell me to stop being a nuisance and that certain things were more important. Looking back, I suppose I should have just given up then. It wasn't worth the effort. I didn't keep my marriage under wraps. I simply didn't rub it in their faces, hoping they would be surprised and maybe even somewhat curious. I did bring up the wedding with my aunts and uncles. Mom would occasionally even be present in the room. She would just smile and say, "That's nice, dear," then veer off topic. After high school, college, and beyond grad school, I used to try to avoid contact with them, but they would guilt-trip me constantly, putting my mom's sisters and grandparents on me. They pulled me back in every time I tried to distance myself. This time feels different, perhaps because I now have Thomas by my side. I'm more confident and stronger. Still, I have to decide what to do next. It's been a whirlwind. As I mentioned, most of Dad's family is on the opposite side of the country. I didn't really know how they felt about me for a very long time. I kept in touch with my dad's side, but I never mentioned the abuse again. When I was 14, I tried to tell them how my parents were treating me. My aunts, uncles, and grandfather all gave them an earful, but when I got home, I was punished so severely I convinced myself I had made it all up. Grandfather was the only one who knew. He was always afraid that if he tried to step in, I would end up resenting him. It's important to note that I now live in a different town than my parents. Actually, they barely know my current address at all. Once Michael tried to break into my previous apartment to steal money, my mother actually justified him by saying siblings share things. I've moved since then. I used to live in a city about an hour's distance from their small village. Speaking of my cousin, she was the one who pointed out that my dad not being at my wedding was a significant problem for him. My cousin ended up cutting them off after that, and they berated her for turning her back on family over a minor incident. I've messaged my dad and said I wanted to meet with him, my mom, and Michael the next day at a neutral site. He responded right away and agreed. We're gathering in a park, and my dad's brother and sisters are accompanying us, likely for damage control. Like he has been for days, my dad looked terrible. I know I need to make some decisions about my relationship with my family going forward, but for now, I'm focusing on enjoying my new life with Thomas. We're looking forward to building our future together, free from the drama and manipulation that's plagued my past. Update 3. It's been a month since my last update. The park meeting I mentioned turned out to be a turning point, but not in the way anyone expected. I'm finally ready to share what happened and how I took control of my life once and for all. The tension was palpable when I arrived at the park. My father looked defeated, my mother had her usual self-righteous expression, and Michael couldn't maintain eye contact. My dad's siblings were there, supposedly as mediators, but I had my own plans. I brought 3 things with me: a folder of documented evidence, my lawyer on speed dial, and an unwavering determination to end this on my terms. Before anyone could speak, I placed a thick folder on the park bench between us. This, I said, opening the folder, is every text, email, social media post, and legal document showing your attempts to steal my house. It also includes evidence of financial fraud. I looked directly at my mother. Remember those college fund documents you claimed were lost in a fire? Grandfather kept copies. Interesting how that money somehow ended up in Michael's accounts. The color drained from my mother's face. Michael started to protest, but I cut him off. I'm not finished. I also have documentation of your attempted break-in at my old apartment, including security footage. And let's not forget the recent tampering with my house locks. My father tried to interject with an apology, but I held up my hand. I didn't come here for apologies. I came to tell you exactly what's going to happen next. I pulled out a document detailing everything they'd stolen from my college fund, with compound interest calculated. You have two options. Either you repay every penny of my college fund that you stole and gave to Michael, with interest, or I'll be pressing charges for financial fraud. My lawyer has everything ready to go. My mother scoffed, trying to maintain her control. You wouldn't dare. We're family. Family? I laughed coldly. You lost the right to call us family when you tried to steal my house. But let me continue. I'm also filing a restraining order against all of you. The documentation of harassment, break-in attempts, and emotional abuse is quite compelling. Michael finally found his voice. You can't do this to us. What about my wedding? Your wedding. Let me tell you about weddings, Michael. While you were planning your extravagant celebration, I was documenting every single threat, every manipulative message, every attempt to steal my property. The law firm I hired specializes in family financial abuse. They find this case particularly interesting. I turned to my parents. The firm also discovered some interesting irregularities in your financial records. Seems like there might be some tax issues that the IRS would be very interested in. Especially regarding certain gifts to Michael that weren't properly reported. The park fell silent. Even the distant sounds of children playing seemed muted. My mother's face had gone from pale to ashen. My father looked like he might be sick. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice steady and cold. You will transfer the full amount of my stolen college fund plus interest to my account within 72 hours. You will cease all contact with me, my husband, and anyone in my immediate circle. You will remove all social media posts about me and make no new ones. If you violate any of these terms, my lawyer will file everything, the fraud charges, the restraining order, and a tip to the IRS. I turned to Michael. And you, your days of playing the golden child are over. I've sent documentation of your break-in attempt and subsequent threats to your employer's HR department. They were particularly interested in how this reflects on their company values. My mother found her voice, though it shook. You would destroy your own family over money? No, Mother. You destroyed this family with years of manipulation and abuse. I'm just making sure I get back what you stole, and ensuring you can never hurt me again. I stood up, gathering my documents. You have 72 hours. My lawyer will be watching for the transfer. If it's not completed, or if any of you attempt to contact me, everything gets filed. And before you consider trying to fight this, remember that grandfather has copies of all the original documents showing the financial fraud. As I walked away, my father called out weakly, Lauren, please. I turned back one last time. You had 20 years to save, please. You had 20 years to stand up for me. You had 20 years to be a father. Time's up. The aftermath was exactly as I planned. Within 48 hours, the full amount appeared in my account. My mother deleted all her social media posts about me. Michael's company put him on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. My father, I heard through my grandfather, finally filed for divorce. Thomas and I used some of the repaid money to upgrade our home security system, not that we needed it anymore. We also donated a significant portion to a nonprofit that helps victims of family financial abuse. It felt right to turn their manipulation into something positive for others. My grandfather, the only family member I still speak to, tells me that my parents' social standing in their small town has crumbled. Turns out that once people learned the full truth, not just about my wedding, but about years of financial manipulation and abuse, their carefully crafted image fell apart. Michael's fiancée left him after the company investigation revealed the extent of his dishonesty. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt sometimes. But every morning, I wake up in my house, my safe, secure house that nobody can take from me, and I know I made the right choice. Thomas and I are planning a proper honeymoon now, a luxury cruise paid for with part of my returned college fund. There's a certain poetry in using their stolen money to build my own happiness. My home office now has a wall dedicated to my achievements, my degrees, paid for through my own hard work, my professional certificates, and a framed copy of the final bank transfer showing the returned college fund. It's not about the money, it's about finally standing up and saying enough is enough. To those who might judge me for being too harsh, for not accepting apologies or attempting reconciliation, I say this: forgiveness is a gift, not an obligation. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away and ensure that toxic people can never hurt you again. I'm not the villain in this story, though they tried to paint me as one. I'm a woman who finally stood up and said no more. My house is mine, my life is mine, and my future is mine. They wanted to steal my house to fund a wedding? Well, they ended up losing far more than that. They lost their reputation, their social standing, and most importantly, they lost any power they ever had over me. Thomas and I are thriving. We host dinner parties in our home, our secure, paid-for home, with friends who actually care about us. I've received 3 promotions at work since this all began, partly because I'm no longer carrying the emotional burden of their manipulation. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't just living well, it's making sure those who tried to hurt you face the consequences of their actions. My mother wanted to control the narrative. Well, now she has no narrative to control. Michael wanted everything handed to him. Now he's learning what it means to face consequences. My father wanted to play the passive bystander. He got to watch everything crumble while being too weak to stop it. I'm done telling this story now. Not because there isn't more to tell, but because I'm ready to start a new chapter, one where I'm the author, and no one else gets to hold the pen. Thank you to everyone who supported me through this journey. Remember, sometimes the happy ending isn't about forgiveness and reconciliation. Sometimes it's about standing your ground and saying, never again.